Maximo World 2025, a recap. What we learned and what's next. And we've got experts in not just the functionality of Maximo and implementation and all the great features and functions, but implementing it at client sites. Years and years of expertise. I'm going to let Patrick, Kevin, and Damien introduce themselves in just a moment. But this is going to be a great webinar today. Excited for everybody joining us. So I'm going to turn it over to Damien, who's going to bring the slides up, and Patrick is our first speaker. Patrick, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for those joining us on the recording. As mentioned, we are all from Cohesive, and I'll do a quick introduction about the company and our speakers. So Cohesive is a global Maximo integrator. As you can see, we have over 22 locations where our colleagues reside and 200 certified consultants. We specialize in asset management and taking that to the next level for our clients by focusing on reliability and operational excellence. This starts with our suite of innovative solutions like Health in a Box accelerators that help clients quickly advance across the maintenance maturity curve. And we're not just about implementations. We provide ongoing reliability and operations consultants and bring a deep technical and industry experience. Next slide, please. And quickly on to our speakers. My name is Patrick Connedy, as Bob mentioned. I'm a director at Cohesive in the Services Division, and I lead our Mass Center of Excellence. Next is Kevin Sutherland, Principal Business Development Management. Kevin has been with Bentley for a number of years, leads our pre-sales engagements, and comes with a wealth of reliability and maintenance experience. Over to Damien DeGovia. He is pre-sales and solutions lead and specializes in our cutting-edge AI implementations. He was a huge proponent of getting our 9.1 AI demos ready for Maximoworld. And it was a big event. So a jam-packed week. There were a lot of really good presentations. So we were able to have a little bit of fun in between that. And we wanted to share some pictures and encourage everyone that can try to go next year as we talk. Next slide, please. As we kind of look at what we're going to cover today, I'm going to cover those common themes and challenges. What did we see across the board? Turning it over to Kevin to talk about what is here and then beyond, and Damien with the move to ALM and what that means for extracting more value. Right. So what were those common challenges? And if I had to put an overarching theme across that, I think it was change. As we look at the fast approaching September 2025 date for end of life support, customers are starting to move into mass. I know we still have a number of upgrades out there that still need to be performed. Clients are trying to decide what they want to do when they go live with mass. And for those that have gone live, they're starting to look at how do they get that return on investment. Continuing that theme of change, as Bob mentioned, right, we're looking at a new location next year for Maximoworld. There's exciting things going on there. And then with IBM, right, they're continuing that shift over to asset lifecycle management with the focus on APM. So to introduce that and to better support that, we've seen a series of new AI agents and solutions that we'll talk about later. But those are all what's coming. Kind of what we saw within the overall presentations was three key areas, right? How do you get your data ready for that return on investment in mass? Customers are really looking at, do they want to do this ahead of the upgrade or do a technical lift and shift and then tackle that later? Assessing really how comfortable they are with their data, how clean is it, and focusing on when do they want to start driving more decisions based on that data. As with all projects, mass or not, right? Organizational change management and adoption can be a complicated process. And I think we saw from the presentations, it's still persistent across the board. Planning is extremely important, engagement from your end users, Everyone is across the board reported back different levels of acceptance and or pushback from the design changes into 9.0 or mass in its entirety. But I think that common theme was getting your end users engaged early, letting them know what's coming, has led to more successful deployments than pushback down the end. And then lastly, what are we doing to drive better return on investment? So the move to mass is a big change, but there's a lot of tools that IBM has brought within reliability strategies, health monitor, and then advancing the overall suite. I think there were something like 27 requests for enhancements that came into mobile in this latest release. So being able to understand where to start, documenting what priorities they are, and then putting those into a roadmap is that last challenge. Where do you go next, and where do you get started? And so at Cohesive, what we see is a three horizons approach. And the way we're looking at this is immediate, short-term, and long-term objectives, right? Where does a client want to be, and understanding their overall approach? So we would establish whether that's a mass upgrade, understanding what you want to deploy. But what's critical here is, with all the options out there and opportunities to grow your Maximo implementation to actually reach that return on investment, you need to set some organizational objectives. You need to define what those priorities are. So once you go through the establish, we start looking at evolve. And these can be different for different clients, kind of depending where you are on that maintenance maturity journey. But the idea being here, right? Some of the recommendations could be getting into reliability strategies, starting to deploy condition-based monitoring, and how you're actually monitoring the overall performance of those strategies. What does your FMEA optimization look like? And then further down the line, long-term asset investment planning. What is your overall strategy as a company for repair and replace? And I think the most important part here is, as IBM has developed the solution further, we're getting closer to a single pane of glass. Seeing more information in one system gives the opportunity to retire some of these tertiary systems that might have been doing the same thing as Maximo. And so that's the approach. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Sutherland.
Hey, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate that. Yeah, first, there's a couple of, I guess my section certainly first is what's new, what is in 9.1 and what's coming beyond. And these are a couple of graphics shared by IBM at Maximoworld. They show the vision and direction of the Maximo application suite. So the circle on the left depicts the major stages of the asset lifecycle: plan, operate, optimize. And just a note, these map really closely to the three horizons that Patrick just introduced. An EAM type of element, and operate, optimize having APM type characteristics, and then asset lifecycle and plan, whether it's planning for new assets or decommissioning. The table on the right side shows the mass solutions that support each lifecycle stage, underpinned across the lifecycle by asset class solutions, environmental solutions, and industry focus, and really importantly, with an AI wrapper all around it. So with that backdrop, let's dig into the new capabilities that we're really excited about. Headline topic for 9.1 is generative AI capabilities. And in Cohesive view, these are a real game changer. Unlike some of the earlier hype all throughout the asset management world around AI, ML, predictive analytics, MAS 9.1 delivers AI tools that are easy. They don't require data science. They're built to serve the end user. Very simple and effective. I hope you'll see. So next slide, please. So the biggest new enhancement is the Maximo AI Assistant. I really like IBM's tagline, a new way to experience work, because it absolutely is. It's a natural language model that initially is connected to work orders and service requests. Very similar to, I'm sure most of you use Copilot or ChatGPT. The AI assistant takes written prompts and quickly returns results. So for example, show me all the work orders over $10,000 cost in the past 12 months, or show me all the work orders with the problem code bearing, or show me service requests that are older than 90 days. We see this as a massive efficiency boost. It'll allow intermediate type users to do more faster. And because there's no query skills involved, it's going to enable less skilled users to analyze and act on data in a way they couldn't even imagine before. The assistant retrieves list that matches a user prompts and then can add insights like sums, averages, counts, min maxes on top of that for additional analytics. And one of the themes that Patrick mentioned initially is data and potentially cleaning data. And I see that AI assistant capability as a huge aid on that front. Users can ask questions like, which work orders don't have job plans associated? Which emergency work orders don't have problem cause codes, or potentially other things similarly, to get that information quickly back in front of them and take action on it. And just as a last note, this is the capability that's in 9.1 today. Immediately when we heard about this, we were like, oh wow, if it returns 10 work orders, can we get it to close those work orders? The answer for now is no, but that's in the next, I think the next wave of functionality is going to be actually taking action, being able to move statuses for ready for planning, ready for scheduling, automatically moving things towards closed, etc. Yeah, so the work order similarity analysis tool is another tool that I see great for helping to clean up data. It's helping to solve one of the oldest problems in maintenance: duplicate work orders and service requests. The AI agent uses one order request to search for others that might be open to show similar items. It also can be used to find historical orders that are similar to current problems. We can quickly learn from the successes or the failures of the past. So great way to consolidate orders that have had issues. In the same path as work order intelligence, there's a problem cause remedy capability. Again, it's also, in my opinion, is solving one of maintenance's oldest issues, and that's how do you improve problem cause remedy data. It's the data that should help us create bad actor lists and go after our plant's worst issues, but all too often we don't get good information. We always get something like other miscellaneous, or just difficult to get it filled out at all. With the capability in MAS, it's going to provide AI agent suggestions on what the problem and cause code should be based on information within the work order, like asset, work type, short and long descriptions in the work order, etc. So that the agent can run this capability for a single work order as the work order is happening real time in its life cycle, or against a group of work orders that didn't have any problem code remedy, or maybe you thought that the answer was suspect. Next slide, please. So I mentioned reliability strategies here, even though it was released actually in 8.11. And again, for those of you who might not be super familiar with this, it's over 800 reliability-based strategies. They're failure modes and effects type strategies with the modes, effects, and even going as far as recommended actions and frequencies. So this capability was released in 8.11, super for troubleshooting or folks who wanted to go through PM optimization or FMEA. However, this iteration in 9.1, now they've released a generative AI FMEA builder. This capability works all throughout the FMEA process, from helping suggest a boundary to helping suggest what are the common components in a pump that might fail. What are the popular failure mechanisms for a seal, all the way down into suggesting potential actions. So it was initially a solution that was made to make building better strategies simpler. In my opinion, this now can cut that time in half again. So it's a huge force multiplier. One of the problems that we had experienced and customers experienced who were looking into using Health Monitor along with Manage was the fact that there were really dashboards all over the place. Dashboards for every major functional area of MAS. So IBM and the 9.1 release actually created a sort of a consolidated dashboard. This image you can see, it's got elements from health, work orders and next PM date and historical PMs from manage, potential alerts from monitor, meter data that might be an alert from manage, et cetera. And it's putting it all in one spot with the asset. So giving immediate information to make fast, accurate decisions. And we feel like this is a quite a good enhancement. Of course, monitor, health, MBI, those were all originally in 8.11, kind of brought into the Maximo application suite for the first time. But I just felt like it was important here to mention that with 9.1, there were performance enhancements made, as well as integration enhancements, really to better integrate, monitor, and help and manage together throughout work cycles, throughout the asset cycle. There's the capability is simpler to set up and easier to get value from. Another big kind of different element, and this is a huge part of the asset lifecycle story, is the Maximo asset investment planning. It's all about how do you make the best possible decisions in the life cycle for potentially extending asset life, refurbishing equipment, decommissioning assets, which are the important ones to act on in 3 years, 5 years. The solution actually has a value framework where you put in what's important to you, what are the critical KPIs, downtime, production, safety, environment, et cetera, and then runs multiple scenarios against your asset classes. In this case, the small image on the bottom shows 10 different scenarios, and I can look at the trade-offs of risk and cost, et cetera, on each one to find what I believe is an optimal spend for my assets that I have, the kind that fits my budget. So we're super excited about this capability. And just to kind of frame it, we, in Cohesive's view, this is really the first time that EAM has met asset performance management and asset lifecycle investment planning in one integrated place. So definitely, again, a change, a step up in the game. Next slide, please. And then to finish off, some other really nice functionality. They aren't for everyone, but definitely for a subset of users. Now the Tririga capabilities that IBM has had for a long time have been integrated into the Maximo application suite called MREF. The general idea is that, of course, there's facility management folks already using this capability, but a lot of the manufacturing, transit, port, airport, a lot of folks out there who are using Maximo for maintenance also have facilities. They also have the need to manage space, manage leases, to be able to do work on setups, projects, et cetera, on their various facility assets. So a great kind of addition for the folks who have needs across that spectrum. Maximo Cost Insights is another nice new, the graphic of that is on the bottom right. The general idea is that it's an IBM solution called Aptio that's been integrated into MAS to give visibility of total cost of maintenance. So it looks at work order cost, labor services, materials, tools, anything. It could even simulate other elements to be able to provide what your organization feels like is the best view of total cost to be able to make smart decisions. And finally, for the renewable market, there's Maximo Renewables, an amazing new analysis engine for solar, wind, and battery storage type assets. The capabilities here really take all of the predictive maintenance and a lot of models on generation and combine them into one solution. And as you can see in the bottom graphic, a very graphical depiction of where optimal is and where we're currently performing to make smart decisions. And with that, I will turn it over to Damien.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. So the main point, at least, and we've spoken around this quite at length, is how exactly do we implement this? Or rather, what are some of the common questions that led us to create this whole 3 horizons approach? So Kevin addressed a lot of the technology. And what we believe at Cohesive fundamentally is that that's just one part of the puzzle. Technology needs to be underpinned by some inherent form of capability. And so it's trying to figure out how do we sequence all of these new pieces of technology with all the change that Patrick mentioned earlier in a way that is impactful both for the real human aspect of the organization while still being competitive. So the real question is, how do we sequence up the most impactful things in order to maximize Maximo? And so what we have on the screen here, I'll get back to in a second, but effectively, this is one of the generic approaches that we take when talking or engaging with customers. So I'll lead you through that with a few thoughts or questions at least. So whilst we were on site at Maximo World, we were talking to a number of customers, a number of Maximo users, and a few certain questions started to come up. So one of the interesting points is we're now in this era where there's a large sample set of users who have already done the upgrade. Some of them successfully, some of them got through it, some of them went halfway, aborted, and then turned around. And what we found is when we're talking to some of these customers, the biggest hindrance for this, rollback or this kind of planning is fundamentally going back down to the data and specifically the management of that. And this is partly in part why, if we look at this initial diagram, we start off with that asset information or asset management information and figure out how best to leverage it. In addition to that, like I said, with capability, we try to complement it with technology. Cohesive has created something called a cohesive data utility, which is effectively a way you can map a 7.6 or a 7 dot something instance all the way up through a 8, all the way to a MAS 9 instance, and allows you to do almost a real-time synchronization from 7 to 9. So when you do your cutover planning, it's a lot simpler, it's super uneventful, super easy. And so that was one of the ways at which we try to solve this problem. Partly in part because we see that if we can't get customers over the line to upgrade, there's all this plethora of capability that they don't really gain access to. But now let's assume that you've already solved that first problem and we address the next problem, which is you've got so many options, how best do we leverage them and what are some of the high impact areas? So returning back to this diagram, a lot of the times people see the earlier formation of work that needs to take place, data alignment, process alignment, as more of a homework activity with minimal benefit. And for the most part, it is a very hefty input-output equal process. But the second we get through to this evolve stage that we have here, when we introduce reliability, that's when we start to see a slight exponential growth and value being returned on the customer. Because we've already put in the hard yards to do some of the groundwork, we can start returning dividends off of that. And the two main areas that we really feel leverage this exponential nature are the AI capabilities, as well as the reliability capabilities. So specifically on the AI front, like we've mentioned earlier, or Kevin mentioned earlier, is the real value it adds is this reduction in the human-computer interface. It allows the technicians who know what they need to do with the tools they have to be able to access that information in a very easy way, which in turn just increases the adoption of the fundamental base Maximo without all the fancy bells and whistles. So for us, it's a case of it can take someone who's got a very basic implementation, who's still on this evolving journey, and really improve their usability, which increases and improves that adoption all the way through. In addition to that, when it comes to the reliability side of things, that's really where we start to see this improvements of an assimilation of both production as well as maintenance. And that's kind of the key with asset performance management, is it really starts to bridge the gap between your OT data, which is things like PLC, SCADA, historians, and your enterprise asset management data, the EAM. And by bringing those two data sets together and communicating with those different teams, reliability-centered maintenance can really have a chance to shine. And this is really those two areas where we feel that there's a lot of value to be brought up for it. So assuming that you've decided that those are the two areas that you would like to pursue, then what exactly should you do today to start getting through to those? And really the simple answer, and I know this sounds very salesy, but the simple answer really is that the AI capabilities, the generative AI capabilities, are very simple to get up and running and to start leveraging and to start using. From an end standpoint, there's no amounts of vast training data that you need to have before we can start looking at this, like previously described in more predictive technologies. It doesn't mean necessarily that we can't fine tune and improve. And this is really where we start to start with the initial capability, and we can refine it moving forward. So with the AI front, we have things like prompt tuning to make it more aligned to your specific use case, the language that you might use when you're asking the chatbot, I'm looking for a place. Does place mean a site, or does place mean a functional location? And we can try and improve that mapping as you start to leverage the capability. Moving over to the reliability side as well, we can really start quite simply out of the box with some of the standard reliability strategies that were mentioned earlier on. And in so doing, refine and allow the organization to adapt and improve. If you really feel that those are a step ahead of where you need to be, there's a number of things specifically around the data side that we can definitely discuss and talk how you can start to improve upon that. But now let's assume that you've already addressed those issues. You already know where you want to go, and we've already got you over the line with the Mass 9. How exactly do you go and create that roadmap, or that long-term roadmap? And so this is really, again, turning back to our initial discussion where we've highlighted in this diagram some of the very generic key indicators or key dependencies and sequences of events that you should really try and focus and target. Again, this is our view of the world in a very broad perspective. And each individual client may enter this horizon or enter a horizon at a different stage of maturity. The sequence of events might change slightly, but really these have been put forward in such a way both to support the IBM development process, as well as to support more fundamentally the asset management processes at each of our organizations and the customers that we typically serve. So I think with that, I might bring it back over to Bob to handle some of the Q&As. And if you'd like to scan the QR code and find out more information, we look forward to chatting with you on that.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Damien. And thank you, Patrick and Kevin. Great information and a great recap of what we experienced at Maximoworld 2025. Team, I think one of the first questions that we should probably address and spend a little bit of time on is this looming date out there. We all learned at the conference from IBM about the end of support date of September 30th for users that are still back on 7.6. Patrick mentioned this in his intro, but I thought maybe if I'm a user, if I'm Bob at Bob's Manufacturing, and I don't have that decision-making authority, but I know that my 7.6 is going to be not supported after September 30th, what are the risks? And then what does Cohesive bring to help me go convince management, hey, we need to move on this because there's risk of us not proceeding onto the newer versions. So let's start with that, Patrick. Where do we go from there? Or team, whoever wants to take that one.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think the first one is kind of assessing what, as you stated, Bob, like what is the risk, right? Looking at what kind of support do you have on, after September 30th, what kind of support can you expect from IBM and understanding that, right? So it's end of life. So you would need to purchase additional support for IBM. And what we're normally doing here is talking to customers about what are you getting and what is the value of that for the short and long term, right? Most of those are not going to include priority one defects. There are two options, but I think it's critical to understand how long an upgrade is going to take to get you onto a supported version, and then what are the concerns about moving forward. A lot of companies are primarily Windows shops, right? So moving to OpenShift can be a bit of a concern, and understanding what a client's cloud strategy is. So extended and sustained support are options, but we really recommend looking at what you're paying there with a plan that likely you would need to upgrade later on, and what kind of support and what is your IT policy to be on a supported version to sit there. So I think it starts with a conversation and then needs to go into a further plan. I don't know, Damien, do you have anything else to add?
I might append to that as well. So again, fully agree with what Patrick said in terms of the options that you have available, but to maybe try and focus, I'm going to put myself in someone else's shoes. And it really depends on who owns the purse or the budget for Maximo. So typically what we see is if Maximo in the organization is really part of the corporate IT policy, the main points that you could potentially, if you're trying to get this escalated in your organization, is leverage some of the IT security and looking at what your IT policy says about apps being in or out of support. If you're going to, or if you're unable to be able to upgrade within that time window, what do you need to have in place to ensure compliance with whatever industry you're in? If you're in a highly regulated industry, there may be things that you have to do very quickly on the IT side just to keep it at 7.6. And again, to what Patrick said, it might then actually just be worth upgrading instead. Again, on the IT side, the biggest risk that we've identified is the whole migration of data and potentially the downtime you may incur with Maximo when you're upgrading. And that's really where that cohesive data utility that we mentioned shines. It was born to address this whole annoying situation that you often find when you're doing the upgrade, that you take one big data set, you upgrade it, and then you redo that upgrade or that data migration process several times until production is live. And in between that, you're introducing so many points of failure. And with the cohesive data utility, I mean, how we do upgrades is we don't do rollbacks. We don't plan for them because they don't happen because of the cohesive data utility. So that's one way that we can try and also ease the pain, the technical pain with upgrading. Now, if you're of the different persona and you're more in a maintenance organization and engineering and maintenance holds the budget for Maximo, then all this IT stuff and OpenShift and all this nonsense doesn't really resound or will get anything moving within the organization. And so that's really where you can start to potentially outsource all the IT headaches to a vendor. So Cohesive is one of those vendors that can effectively do end-to-end solution for you if you require. From a value perspective, what we've engaged with a lot of our customers with is assuming perhaps that you're at 7.6, you were on the previous licensing, now moving over to AppPoints, you have the ability to leverage mobile. Now, if you have mobile, you can start doing inspections. With inspections, you can start capturing metadata. With metadata, you can start doing condition-based maintenance. And all of these things start to then create a broader value discussion against what we said earlier about incorporating that reliability-centered maintenance capability through leveraging the technology. So depending as to which side of the fence you may find yourself in, it really depends if you want to focus more on the technical IT risk associated, or if you want to look at the business value that can be demonstrated. But both arguments need to be weighed simultaneously.
And a question just popped in from Paul, and I'm sure this is going to vary greatly. Like you said, Damien, if you're a regulated industry, there are different business decisions that need to be made. But the question is, what is the approximate downtime or transition time for a client upgrading from 7.6 to 9? I'm sure that varies widely based on number of sites, complexity of the data sets, but does Cohesive see, sort of an average as you're advising clients out there that are about to go down this upgrade path?
I see Patrick got off mute, so
Yeah,
let him.
I'll do the first answer and I'll let you do the CDR, CDU. So mostly we're seeing similar downtimes, right? So when someone moved from 7.5 to 7.6 or 7.6 to 7.6.1, you're seeing a comparable downtime. So we're talking here about the either mock or your actual go live, right? When on, let's say if you have a financial requirement, right? We go down Friday evening. All the systems related to that would be impacted. So we're trying to do as much work as we can over the weekend. We're still doing those over the weekend and getting them ready on time. So if it's a standard upgrade without any additional tooling in there, we're seeing comparable times to that. Now, if downtime is critical for the business and they're not able to operate with a large interruption, we have an alternative that Damien can kind of talk about with limited downtime.
So typically with CDU, I think one of the quickest we had was like 25 minutes downtime, because your data and your transactions are basically just being synchronized back and forth. At Maximoworld, we had one of our customers actually present about how they leverage the CDU. For really super large databases, so we're talking maybe like 1 terabyte kind of big implementations, we could be looking maybe at around an hour. But again, Bob, like what you said to preface that, it is very dependent on number of transactions we're synchronizing,
Right.
speed between two databases. So it can vary quite significantly, but we're looking at hours and not necessarily days.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll just add on really quickly.
Go ahead, Kevin, please.
At Maximoworld, and I think Go Maximo as well, Williams Energy presented and when their upgrade, they were expecting, or historically had seen, as Patrick mentioned, sort of an over the weekend, 2.5 days. Their upgrade was 2 hours. So it cut it from two plus days to 2 hours.
Nice. That I remember that presentation. That was powerful, and folks can find that in our presentation database. Another question, guys. This might be down in the weeds a little bit, but does Maximo have the ability to integrate GPS files so the inspections of large installations can be imported into generic Maximo work orders? I think David is the one who submitted that question.
So in Maximo Mobile, there is the ability
I'm
for you
sorry.
to then click a button effectively, and then that saves the GPS location of where the individual was when they clicked that button to do the inspection. In certain regions of the world as well, so within Europe and GDPR and all those kind of things, the tracking does become a little bit interesting, to say the least. But that is in standard Maximo Mobile. If you're looking at broader solution providers, again, because there are other vendors out there, and I'm speaking very openly, there may be some other functionality there as well.
Okay, team, Kevin, you mentioned cleansing data as part of one of those key steps of optimizing. In the industry trends and insights survey research that we did in 2025, Reliability Web, we found that roughly 65% said they had trust in their data. In other words, there's still a large group of users out there in the Maximo community that are questioning the accuracy of their data, the completeness of their data, and if there's bias in their data. You know, who set this up? Whose rules were guiding us when we decided what data we're going to bring in what context, in what frequency? So they're worried about that. How does Cohesive address that in the Maximo community about, boy, am I going to go through the pain and expense of upgrading to 9.1 when I don't trust my data? Kevin, how do we address that?
Well, I can probably let Damien kind of round this off some, or Patrick, but Cohesive's got a lot of experience taking a look at, we know have accelerators as far as what is, what good looks like, what good data standards to come in with and preload Maximo or to clean up. We're proficient with some desktop tools to help do that as well. I think the AI solutions that we saw today are going to continue to help with that, and then we've seen a lot from customers actually that we can recommend. Folks have done really cool things like bringing Maximo data to Power BI to be able to look very quickly and see which orders don't have job plans, which job plans don't have labor, which to get a fine look at specifically at those work orders. But yeah, Damien and Patrick, you probably can answer a little more thoroughly.
I would say it comes back to a bit of the reliability story, right? Like it's a recursive or cyclical problem. If you don't trust the data and you're not putting in good data, you're not willing to use that data to make decisions, right? So if I don't think this is even the right sensor that I'm pulling in for a chiller, then that's a huge problem. So I think there's progressive opportunities here, right? And this is the one big thing I really like about health and being able to turn that on. The licensing is straightforward. So customers can start to look at, if we just did a simple health score, what does that look like in the system? Because the primary move needs to be towards condition-based monitoring and getting away from work order paper systems, right? That are maybe just doing a paper work order in Maximo and not using the depth and breadth that it offers for your business. So understanding that reliability can help drive that return on investment for the move to mass. So starting with smaller things like health, looking at tying in condition monitoring and really getting better data progressively through that, I think has helped a number of customers rationalize why they were able to move to mass and adopt some of the additional applications.
Okay, Kevin, I think in your part of the presentation, you mentioned the AI assistant. Bryce is saying that are those available today in the standard Mass 9 upgrade? My organization recently upgraded from 7.6 to Mass 9, but I don't see any of the AI capabilities available on my dashboard.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is a 9.1. I'll let Patrick and Damien check me before I say too much, but But it's our understanding that, you know, this 9.0 to 9.1, at least internally, what we did is a much simpler upgrade than from the 7 vintage to 8.11 or 9. But it is available in 9.1. You know, Patrick and Damien,
If I may also just preface to that, it is available, but it has to be explicitly installed. So depending on who the partner is supporting you, that would have to be something that you would intentionally request that they need to add it onto it. When you do add it on, there's going to be some change in your infrastructure requirements. So the machinery used to keep Maximo alive. And then there will also be some change to your app point consumption, because obviously you're now turning on a new module, and so that's going to consume a bit of app points. There is a slight nuance when it comes to the large language models. There's a concept called tokenization, which is basically you type in a prompt and say, show me the work order, or work order with such and such a criteria. All of those words count as tokens, very loosely speaking. And so every time you ask it a question, it's going to consume a certain amount of tokens. Every time it responds with an answer, it's going to consume a certain amount of tokens. And so you have a token limit based off of the number of app points that you use. So for example, the standard for a on-prem installation as of 9.1 in the previous, because there's a new patch coming out the 28th this month, was I think 10 billion tokens for 10 app points, which basically means about 25 users can very comfortably go on and off and create a whole bunch of queries throughout the day. But again, these consumption-based metrics may change as IBM understands the usage patterns. And also it's something that you can also limit with your user base. But that's a whole other separate discussion that we can also have at a later point. I'm very passionate.
Fantastic.
And then
what a great jumping off point. Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick, close us out here.
One caveat to that. I believe it's work order intelligence did come out in 9.0, so they would need to talk to their IT department or partner, right? You could test some of that, but to get the bulk of it, you got to be on 9.1.
All right. Fantastic. We're up against the clock. Another great episode of Reliability TV. I want to thank Kevin and Patrick and Damien and the Cohesive team for this awesome content today.